Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. Guys and girls, I'm a retired New York City police detective, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, please consider hitting the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you will get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we have a special treat for you. I have an attorney who has volunteered her time from the New York, New Jersey area. She's a friend of Tiffany, who we all know and love. We got to meet her a couple of weeks ago. She's awesome. She recommended this guest to us. We're going to cover the Dylan Rounds case. The new charges for James Brenner, they're going to be explained by Attorney Sophia Shalaby. And before we went live, she corrected me. I spelled her name wrong, her first name wrong in the title. Is anybody surprised by that? DutyRon, this old man, sometimes is not good with my chubby fingers when I do the typing. So before we get into the show, though, I want to say a special thank you to you, the Patreon supporters, the channel members, and all of the folks who positively engage in Crime Time with DutyRon, this community, because without you guys, we have nothing here. So I want to give thanks and praise to each and every one of you, the replay viewers, the subscribers, the moderators, and the folks who volunteer their time to send the questions, the tough questions, to Ed Wallace, myself, and our special guests that we have on. You guys are what makes this a great place. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So Barbara George says, hey, DutyRon, what about spell check? Didn't work. It failed me. Spell check didn't work because when I was making the title, I wasn't using a device that had spell check. So, and if I did, I ignored it. So shame on me. Shame, DutyRon. So let's get right into it. Ed Wallace is in the chat. He's in India. I don't know what time it is there, but I know it's late. So Ed, thank you for being here. That's my co-host. That's my partner in all things crime, Ed Wallace. We're going to play a little piece to set this up for all you guys. So tonight, hold your questions to the end of the show because we're going to have a Q&A with our good friend Sophia. She agreed to take some questions from the audience, and we may even get bold and have a call in. Today is International Women's Day, Professional Women's Day, and I give kudos to all of the professional ladies out there, and it could mean someone who's home taking care of business on the home front. You guys are all awesome. So lots of girl power in the audience, and I'm tipping my cap to the ladies out there. Here we go. I'm going to start us off with this little piece, and we'll be right back.
Of a 19-year-old who went missing near the Utah-Nevada border in May of last year. After 9 months of searching, the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office has charged a man for the murder of Dylan Rounds. ABC4's Annika Johns joins us live from the newsroom with the latest update from Rounds' mother. Annika?
That's right, Sarah. 60-year-old James Brenner, was formally charged last night for the disappearance of Dylan Rounds. When speaking to his mother, she told me that this is a lot of mixed emotions, but that there's a weight lifted off of their shoulders for being able to say, I told you so.
We have been fighting for Dylan for 9 months, and so we have the aggravated murder charge and the desecration of a body.
60-year-old James Brenner was formally charged by the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office for the disappearance of 19-year-old Dylan Rounds.
We have been screaming from the beginning that we knew that Brenner murdered Dylan.
Rounds had been living in an RV camper in Lucin while working on farming land when he disappeared last May. According to his parents, Brenner, who worked on the farm, was one of the last people Rounds contacted. According to the charging documents, deputies discovered a pair of boots belonging to Rounds. One boot had a blood stain on it with DNA that matched Rounds. The boot also contained Brenner's DNA.
The few interactions that I had with him, I didn't, my hair didn't raise on the back of my neck. I didn't get, he was just like everybody else out there.
After Rounds' phone was located in Lucin Pond, a digital forensic download led to the discovery of a time-lapse video with a timestamp of the time of the disappearance. The video showed Brenner cleaning a gun with bloodstains on his arms and shirt. The shirt was obtained and analyzed by authorities. Rounds' DNA was on it.
There's still a lot to come. There's still a lot that we have to go through. But for us as a family, And for Dylan, this is a win.
While this is a step in the right direction for Round's family, his mother says the fight still isn't over.
It's not an answer yet. We don't have Dylan's body back yet. We don't have a conviction. I am convinced we're going to get one, but it's just a relief to know that our fight was worth it.
Right now, his mother says that their main priority is to just bring Dylan back home and that they now have the resources to do just that.
We have elite teams across the country now that are willing to come out and spend their whole summer to find Dylan. So that is still our main goal, bring Dylan home.
Brown's mother continued stating that she hopes that a plea bargain is made and that Brenner reveals where Dylan's body is. However, if he doesn't, they're getting ready to head back out to Lucin to find their son for themselves.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Some heavy duty stuff has come to light in regards to
Reporting
this.
live from the newsroom, Annika Johns.
So a lot of things came out, and I think by a show of hands here, how many of us were shocked that they had so much evidence that was unbeknownst to us? We never heard anything about forensic downloads from the cell phone. So a lot of this stuff was new information, and that's why 2 days ago when I did the live stream, I put breaking news, new information. The shirt with the blood on it, the video, the cell phone video that was recovered. These are all things that make you go, and they're a prosecutor's best friend. Evidence, circumstantial evidence and evidence like this, physical evidence, is huge. I want to introduce to you guys, without further ado, because she has a really strong resume. Sophia Shalaby, she's an accomplished and experienced criminal defense attorney in New York and New Jersey. She practices in both states. She's a former acting municipal prosecutor, and she's been doing criminal defense for over a decade, having defended hundreds of criminal cases and all types of crimes, including homicide. She served as a judge in a law moot court competitions and currently teaches CLEs to other attorneys in New Jersey. She's also a municipal public defender. Her father is a retired New York State correction officer, and he was born and raised in Egypt. And she's got a little bit of a story that she could tell us, if she doesn't mind, before we get started, about her dad, because he is a consummate professional in the law enforcement community. He's done so much for our country and for his home country. He's a retired New York State corrections officer and was the president of the FOP. That's the Fraternal Order of Police on Staten Island. That's Ed's alma mater. Ed lives in Staten Island. So he was an FOP president for the past 30 years. Her grandfather was appointed by the governor of New York State as a coroner, which I found fascinating, in the 1950s. And he worked on hundreds of homicide cases and that he's discussed with Sophia. So she's dedicated her profession to a career in seeking justice. Amazing. Sophia, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule. You have your own law practice. I love and appreciate and respect that you took out the time to come and visit us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Ron. It's a pleasure, but I am sorry for the circumstance, and my thoughts and prayers are with Dylan and his family at this time. I have taken a look at the charges here. I can get to the story about my dad in a bit, but I think that we've got some work to do here in taking a look at what's happening. When I took a look at this case, it doesn't seem to have gotten an enormous amount of media attention like some other cases have, but there's been a lot of reporting on it, and I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this case.
Hey Tiff, before Sophia, before we go into the whole the tip of the iceberg and all of the information in this probable cause affidavit and the summons that everybody's been looking at, If you could you just give a little bit, I mean, I know I just read your bio, but if you could just give them a little bit of overview of what you're currently doing right now, because I didn't dive into that. Everybody in the chat's asking I'm late. What does Sophia do? So if you could just give them a little bit on what you're currently doing now in your practice.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So I have offices in New York and New Jersey, and I do primarily criminal defense. I've been doing that for over 10 years now. I do some family law, and I also do civil litigation. So a lot of times when people ask me, I have a general practice, but typically almost everything that you need done in court is something that I have experience in, with the exception of a few things like taxes. Right. I don't do numbers, not a numbers person. Bankruptcy, immigration, those kind of things I don't do. But yeah, I have a focus on criminal defense at this point. And I've recently been appointed as a public defender in a municipality in New Jersey. So that's also been an interesting thing that I've been doing, because there's so many cases and there's so little time. So, a lot of people always want to know, well, why, if this person is guilty of something, why would they ever get the benefit of a reduction of the charge? Like, why is this being amended? And it really boils down to there are just too many cases and too little time. So the courts are just completely inundated. So in an effort to avoid the resources that are needed for trials, if we had to try every single case, they'd go on for indefinitely.
Right.
But so that's why we have plea deals. And I'd say, most of the cases, that's what they end up in, is some sort of a plea deal. So that's generally what I've got going on right now.
I think it's noble that you do the, that you're a public defender, because most attorneys, at least criminal defense attorneys that I know, try to kind of stay away from that. And it goes to show that, you really want to help people. And being in the public defender's office and doing that, in addition to having your own private practice, that must be pretty difficult to juggle those both of those roles, so to speak, because the public defender's office is a busy place. A lot of people cannot afford an attorney, and when we get read your Miranda rights, there's the statement in there: if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you by the court. So you definitely are busy. I don't want to take up a lot of time talking about this legal mumbo jumbo stuff, because you got to get into James Brenner and his charges. So Candace Cooley, I just want to set this up for you, and then you could take it from here. Candace Cooley, Justin Rounds, it's Dylan's parents, mom and dad. They have been fighting for 9 months. They've been screaming from the rooftops. James Brenner is the primary guy. They wanted him arrested from the get-go, just like any good parent would want, right? They were demanding, we want this guy arrested, screaming from the rooftops. And again, my partner, Ed Wallace, said, this is what any good parent would do. They would demand that action was taken. But they had behind the scenes info about James Brenner, about how he acts and about some of the things that he did. And you heard in the piece there, her talk about, well, nothing really jumped out at us. But now, after the fact, they are now thinking, oh, this was a little bit weird. This was a weird. So after everything's happened, unfortunately, and like you said, our hearts break for the parents. Our heart breaks for the entire Cooley and Rounds family. But at the end of the day, the law is the law, and you need to have a lot of things in place before indictments come down, before, we see documents like this where probable cause is spelt out, and things of that nature. So there's a lot of investigating behind the scenes, and attorneys like yourself are there to challenge that evidence and also make sure on the prosecutor side that they have everything, all their ducks in order. So I wanted you to, kind of give the audience an overview of how the criminal justice system goes in a condensed version, and then let's jump right into the charges put forth to James Brenner.
Definitely. So the something that taking a look at what happens in the criminal justice system is complicated, but understandable. I mean, even to the extent that you have a right to represent yourself in a criminal trial. So these are things that are understandable, but there's a level of education that needs to go into this in order for people to understand how the system works. A lot of people are so surprised by things if they've never had any experience with the criminal justice system as to how these things work, as to even with regard to what the judges are, what the judge's role is versus what the prosecutor's role is. Prosecutors have wide discretion, much more with regard to the charges being issued or dismissed than the judge actually does. And everybody should keep in mind that the state, the prosecutor, the judge, even the criminal defense attorney, we're all limited within the confines of what the laws are. So in this particular case where we're at right now, there's a summons. And the summons has 2 charges on it. The summons indicates that this individual, James Brenner, has been charged and that he needs to answer to the allegations within each count. So here he's got 2 counts, and answering to those counts is done in an arraignment. That's really what that's the first experience that the defendant will have if they haven't been arrested with this case that they've been charged with, where they go in and they plead one of 2 things. All an arraignment means is, are you pleading guilty or not guilty? I've personally never seen anyone at an arraignment plead guilty at that early stage. Almost everyone will plead not guilty. And at the arraignment, the judge will advise the defendant of what the penalties are and what they're facing. And if they haven't obtained an attorney already, the judge will let them know that they have a right to an attorney. And if they qualify, that they could have a public defender.
Now, I wanted to stop you just for a second. If I hope I don't distract you by doing this, but Sophia, James Brenner, as we know, is in federal lockup. So the urgency for to take him out of federal lockup and bring him before a judge. I know that there's time constraints. There's probably laws within the state of Utah. He is in the 1st Judicial District. Well, this summons is in the 1st Judicial District of Box Elder County, Utah, as shown here. What is so? According to Nate Eaton, which is East Idaho News, he was talking over the weekend. He went live from his vehicle. He went live from his house. I'm going to show that in a few minutes. He talked about because he's from the area. He's from Idaho/Utah. He covers cases in like that surrounding states and so forth. So he covers a lot of different stuff. And he said it was to his knowledge that Utah has certain restrictions where they have to bring these charges forward to this defendant in a certain amount of time. I'm sure that the prosecutor's office here knows what their constraints are and what their limitations are. But here we are. It's Wednesday, and these charges were brought. This summons, as it says here, says that it was issued on Friday morning, which is the 3rd. So I wanted to see if you could speak a little bit about that, and So because people are asking questions, I'm basing what I'm asking you based on what's been coming into me, and people are questioning and concerned about that. Can they screw this up by not bringing these charges forward in a certain amount of time? And do they know about it?
So I can tell you, generally speaking, as long as charges are brought within the statute of limitations, that's not a problem. I don't know what the statute of limitations is in Utah, but I'd be surprised if there was a limit with regard to homicide. Usually you'll see that homicide, there is no statute of limitations on, or it's like, maybe 20 years or something. So just because they've put the charges on a summons doesn't necessarily mean that they have to, if this summons, if the way it works in Utah is that he's already been formally charged with this, like if this has been served to him, then at that point, he would be under some sort of a time limit with regard to his coming in for an arraignment. And that would be something that's scheduled by the court. And that typically happens pretty quickly after charges have been served.
Okay.
So him being locked up right now, if they've served him with the summons, and if that's every state has things done procedurally a little bit different. But if they've served him with this, I would expect that there's going to be an arraignment date set by the court soon.
Right. Yeah. It says filed 3-3, information, indictment information. And then it's to issue proposed. And I think that's why we saw proposed across the paperwork. Case filed by so-and-so. And then it just, gives the judge, Brandon Maynard, assigned. So all of this stuff was concerning to some of the folks who really don't know much. And thank you for talking in layman's terms, because when we start talking legal mumbo jumbo, people kind of get lost in the sauce. So that's why I like to have folks like yourself come on who can really speak to the audience and about this process. Now, these charges from my research that I did quickly, the count one is a first degree felony. Criminal homicide, aggravated murder, 76-5202, first degree felony, and then abuse and desecration of a human body. When I looked this up, Sophia, it said when these two are mixed together, it would fall within the auspice of the Utah death penalty if they went after him. If the prosecutor chose to do that. Did you see anything in regards to that when you have these two charges, count one and count two combined? The prosecutor has the option to go, it would qualify under the death penalty statute?
So I did take a look at the Utah Criminal Code, and although I didn't see a combination of those two, not to say that might not be necessary, but it did say in the aggravated murder code, which is what the first count of this summons is aggravated murder. And the penalty for that is the death penalty. If the prosecutor files a notice of intent that they are seeking the death penalty. So if they are, this goes back to what I was saying before, is that the prosecutors have very wide discretion. It's not up to the judge as to what this person is charged with or not charged with, unless there's a motion to dismiss filed and it's successful. And at that point, the judge says, look, there is not enough evidence for such and such charge, that charge is being dismissed. But as far as like the initial charging goes, that's within the prosecutor's discretion. And the the aggravated murder charge, if they don't seek if they don't file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty, then it appears that according to the criminal code in Utah, that the sentence could be life in prison without the possibility of parole, or an indeterminate sentence of not less than 25 years.
Gotcha.
So it's interesting, though, in the Utah code that they say an indeterminate prison term of not less than 25 years, and they don't specify that it's without the possibility of parole. So there may be case law in Utah which says that it's a mandatory minimum 25 years without the possibility of parole, but it doesn't say it within the face of the statute,
Right.
like the first section does.
Yeah, I think I might have just been confused when I was reading it, because I went to Utah Criminal Code on an attorney's website, and and he basically broke it down, and I'm trying to find it so I could show it to you. But the way he broke it down and the way I read it is, if you have the criminal homicide, the charge 1 and charge 2 combined together, brings it into it has the qualifying factors. Here in New York, when it was on the books, if you murdered 2 or more people, or if you shot a police officer, EMS, paramedic, firefighter, any type of law enforcement, correction officer, and so forth, it would fall under that, the aggravating circumstances, or whatever they call that, that would make it a death penalty case, or could make it a death penalty case. Anyways, I don't want to get too caught up on it, but Brenner is 59 or 60 years old at this point. If he was to receive a sentence of 25 years or 20 years, I highly doubt that he would live that out and get out of jail. And like you said, Sophia, it's probably not going to be with the possibility of parole if convicted of the top charge. So, but I wanted you to, if you could, and I know that we're getting sidetracked here, walk us through what's next for James Brenner as it states here in the summons and what we're looking at. What's the next step going forward?
So the next step is he would have to be arraigned.
Right.
Assuming he's going to plead not guilty. After that, typically his attorney, and based on what's been reported in the news, he does have an attorney, I think, who has not been providing any comments at this time, at least from what I had seen. His attorney would be requesting discovery. Right. And for those of you who don't know what discovery is, it's basically all of the evidence that the state has against the defendant. In this country, you are entitled to see every piece of evidence that the state has against you that they're going to use to prove a case against you. You have a right to review it, analyze it, have an expert discuss it. You could file motions based on it. They have a duty to provide any exculpatory evidence. They can't withhold evidence that would show that, the defendant may not have done this. So after discovery is complete, at that time, there's an indictment. So, and then usually the prosecutor and the defense attorney, sometimes they'll have pre-indictment conferences where they start to talk about, is there going to be an offer made by the state to plead this case out? Are there going to be any motions filed here? That will happen sometimes before the indictment. And those types of motions could be a motion to suppress evidence, which would be based on the state obtaining evidence illegally. If that happened, and I don't see here in this case the evidence with regard to his boots being found, that was in plain sight, plain view. It was just out in the open. No motion to suppress the evidence on that.
Right.
So that's going to remain as good evidence. The video on the phone was the victim's phone. No motion to suppress on that. So that evidence is going to stay. Perhaps the shirt that the defendant was wearing, but if they had a good warrant for it, there's going to be no successful motion to suppress that evidence either. And then the prosecutor will be able to use that as well. Another possible motion is a motion to dismiss. But a motion to dismiss is usually ruled upon by the court in the light most favorable to the state. So that's a tough motion to win sometimes. So then we talk indictment. This case, no criminal case can ever get to a trial unless the defendant has been indicted by a grand jury. And a grand jury is an interesting type of situation because presenting to a grand jury is an interesting situation because typically the defendant is not there. And the prosecutor goes and presents whatever evidence that they think would lead the jury to find probable cause for the charges. And if the grand jury comes back with a finding of probable cause, then those charges stick. And now the state can proceed to a criminal trial. In the event that the grand jury comes back and no bills the charges, the case goes away. If the grand jury does not find probable cause, that case goes away. It's done. The prosecutor can't do anything with it.
Right. We hope that doesn't happen in this case. Yeah.
For Dylan and his family, we certainly hope that the right thing is done here. And there's some very strong evidence here with regard to Mr. Brenner. Surprising evidence. I mean, the video that is on the victim's phone, and I'm reading directly from the factual basis probable cause statement here, which is attached to the charges. This is a statement that the prosecutor must include to support the charges. There has to be facts that would rise to the level of a legal standard, which is called probable cause. As many people have heard, there's several standards of proof in the law. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest one that we have. And probable cause is much lower than that. In order for a grand jury to come back with a finding of probable cause, they just need to have more. You have to have more than a hunch, right? You can't have speculative conclusions. You do have to have facts. And if the facts lead a reasonable person to believe that the defendant committed the crime, that's all you need for probable cause.
Right.
That is not what you need for a criminal trial.
Right. You need so much more to go forward in a trial. Listen, to get an indictment, that's just the early stages of this thing, to get to the part where you have the probable cause to get either a judge to sign a warrant or to have and go out and effect this lawful arrest. He's in a prison. He's in an actual, federal lockup since July of 2022. And I think that is one of the reasons, Sophia, is that it took so long, because they didn't have to worry Ed Wallace and myself, that's my co-host, we were happy when we heard that he was arrested on unrelated gun charges, because that was in a sense, him being put on ice. And the investigators could now take their time and not rush anything and make sure that they process the digital evidence, all the forensics from the shirt that they took off of Brenner, the phone. This could be something as so powerful that Dylan Rounds, in his final act, took a video because he may have sensed that he was in trouble and that this was going south. And he had the wherewithal. And I'm hoping and praying that this was the case. I'm not saying that this is the case, but I'm hoping and praying that it was the case, that Dylan Rounds had enough foresight to say to himself, wait a minute, I got to start recording this. And he started recording on his phone and got this perpetrator as he was acting violently with him. Or we don't know what's on this phone. Like you said before we went live, when we conferenced before this, you said, we don't know what's on that phone. We know that they have a video, a time-lapsed video. They have the evidence from his shirt. From that video, there was blood, as they said, on his arm and on his shirt. And that blood came back to Dylan Rounds. So this is powerful, powerful, powerful evidence. And we have just a slither, a small, teeny piece of what they have, because they're not going to expose their cards. And Sophia, Ed and I talk about this till we're blue in the face. It's not important for a prosecutor they are attorneys. Prosecutors are attorneys. They are not in a rush to expose their cards. The only time they're going to expose everything is when they have to give the discovery and when the trial commences. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I overstepping here?
No, not at all. This trial strategy, the state is the party with the burden of proof, and they do have a burden to produce all of the discovery. So whatever they have to give. And if they're going to use any witnesses, they have a duty to disclose that before trial. There's no, they call it the element of surprise at trial. There can't be this element of surprise unless they don't know about it. Unless they don't know about it until the eve of trial, and those things happen sometimes.
Absolutely. I heard your printer running. I know you have something important that you want to talk to us about, but I want to show this little piece from Nate Eaton. He was in his home. He's the East Idaho news guy. Unless you're going to lose your thought, if you want to continue, you want to say what you printed out and talk about. I'll give it.
No, actually, I'm so sorry that you can hear that. I need to shut it off. I don't know what's printed.
No. Please. You could do whatever you want. I just thought you were printing something out to talk to us about, but it's fine. Let me play this piece while you review your documents that came in. So this is Nate Eaton from East Idaho News. The reason I want to play this is because he talks about timelines of how they have to arraign him or present him with these charges under Utah state law, under the law. So let's see if I can get this. Hold on a second. All right, here he is. This is raw. This is him in his home, and his son actually barges in. But I think he says a lot here. So let's take a listen.
Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday, March 4th today. I realize it's a weekend, but wanted to come on this morning and give you a few more details in the Dylan Rounds case. It has been a 9-month ordeal for this poor family who has been wondering where Dylan is and what happened to him, and if there will ever be any resolution. And last night it was announced, it was filed that James Brenner, a man from North Dakota originally, is charged with 1 count of aggravated murder, a first-degree felony in Utah, and 1 count of abuse or desecration of a human body, a third-degree felony. And I wanted to show you, we have the court documents today, and I wanted to show you and tell you exactly what they say to give you a little bit more context as to why they are charging this man. He has been a person of interest, the key suspect, you could say, since pretty much the beginning. Dylan disappeared over Memorial Day weekend, 2022, made a call to his grandmother in Idaho, told his grandmother that he had to get the grain that was in the truck inside the shed because it was about to rain. And so he was got off the phone, and then no one heard from him again. And the family went out there the following Monday, I believe, and to see what was going on. And Dylan's truck was there, his trailer was there, but he wasn't. They found his boots with a stain of blood or some sort of stain behind a dirt pile in the surrounding property. And nearby was a man named James Brenner, who was squatting, allegedly, reportedly squatting on property out there in his trailer. And he has been a suspect, and now he is officially the suspect in the murder of James Brenner. So I want to read you what's in these court documents. You can hear them exactly what they say. Count 1, aggravated murder, a first-degree felony that on or about May 28th, 2022, the defendant did 1, intentionally or knowingly cause the death of another, and the defendant, the actor, previously committed or was convicted of an offense committed in another jurisdiction, which is committed in the state, which would be a violation of a crime listed in subsection 1, or an offense committed in another jurisdiction with, if committed in this state, would be a violation of the crime listed in subsection 1. James Brenner has a violent history. He has faced charges elsewhere. He's been in jail on a firearms violation because he's a convicted felon. He's not allowed to have firearms. And when police went out there and served a search warrant last summer, they found firearms in his property. So he was arrested at that point. So there's the count 1, aggravated murder. Count 2, abuse or desecration of a human body, a third-degree felony that on or about May 28th, 2022, the defendant did intentionally and unlawfully disturb, move, remove, conceal, or destroy a dead human body or any part of it. Now, we don't know where Dylan is. We still don't have his body. The parents, I spoke with Candace Cooley last night, they're remaining optimistic that Dylan's body will be found in the spring once the snow melts. But they're saying that not only did the authorities are saying not only did James Brenner kill Dylan Rounds, he obviously desecrated the body, moved it, hid it, concealed it. And as far as we know, he has not said where that body is, because if he had, I can guarantee you searchers would be out there looking for it, especially the Cooley, Candace Cooley and Justin Rounds, Dylan's dad, they'd be out there. So here's the probable cause statement. The 19-year-old victim was reported as a missing person on or about May 30th, 2022. Sheriff deputies, along with search and rescue crews, immediately got to work on efforts to locate the victim, but were unsuccessful. During the search, deputies discovered a pair of boots belonging to the victim nearby. One boot had a blood stain that DNA analysis confirmed belonged to the victim, in addition to DNA belonging to the defendant, James Brenner. The victim's phone records were also obtained, which showed movements on the day of his disappearance on a remote property in Lucin where the defendant was squatting. Phone data showed that the last signal from the victim's phone was at the Lucin Pond, and a search of the pond led to the discovery of the victim's phone. This is something, I don't know if we've reported this, but we've known it. We may have known it off the record for some months that Dylan's phone was found at the bottom of the pond. I don't think we've reported it because it was told to us off the record. They drained the pond and they found his phone. Here's the interesting thing. The phone, even though it had been in the water for however many months, a digital forensic download of the phone was conducted and led to the discovery of a time-lapse video with a timestamp taken at the time of the victim's disappearance. That leads me to think Dylan's phone was on, recording a video at the time he disappeared. That is a key line in this probable cause, that a digital forensic download of the phone was conducted and led to the discovery of a time-lapse video with a timestamp taken at the time of the victim's disappearance. And then the video showed defendant with blood stains on his arms and shirt as he's cleaning a gun.
All in the same video from Dylan Rounds' phone. This is outrageous. This is outstanding. This is a wow moment here. I'm going to let him talk just for another couple of minutes, but we'll come right back on. I see Sophia's taking notes, so I'm happy. I'm thrilled to come back to her.
That if you can pull time-lapse video of the suspect cleaning a gun with blood all over their arms and shirt right after Dylan disappeared, that is strong. That is strong evidence. The shirt, which the defendant was wearing in the video, was analyzed, and the victim's DNA was found on the shirt. So Dylan's DNA was on James Brenner's shirt. Defendant was interviewed and made several claims that corroborated forensic evidence, in addition to making numerous demonstrably false statements. Despite a thorough investigation and extensive search, the victim's body was not recovered due to the defendant removing and concealing it. So it sounds like, and that's it. That's it for the probable cause.
I'm going to stop it there because, Tiffany, with these, we have some wow moments here. And I know that you and I both knew all of this, but hearing it laid out like this is just unbelievable. That what I said before I set this thing up, is it possible that Dylan knew something was going south and he had the wherewithal to take his phone out? It's a 19-year-old kid. They know. Listen, I'm 58 years old. I'm pretty savvy when it comes to this stuff, but I know my sons who are 25 and 30, they run circles around me with this stuff. So could Dylan have taken his phone out? Could this perpetrator been so stupid and hit the record as he snatched it away from him, unbeknownst to him? We don't know. But how powerful is this as from an attorney's point of view?
It's shocking evidence. It's just absolutely, it's shocking. It's disturbing. As far as facts go, I mean, it's just unbelievable that this is on the victim's phone, that this is on Dylan's phone. When I first read that in this probable cause statement, my initial feeling was that Dylan is making a statement in this case, because you get the sense that something horrific was happening and Dylan wanted to record it. That's the sense that you get. That's not a fact. We don't know that yet. That may be something that comes out at some point based on, any other evidence that could arise. But that's a very, very, very strong fact, especially because you've got Dylan's DNA on that shirt that James Brenner's wearing.
Yeah.
A lot of things could be said about, to create some sort of a reasonable doubt here, but their DNA is linked on the boot, and it's also linked in a video with the defendant with blood on him cleaning a lethal weapon. This is very strong evidence. But from a legal perspective, the question is that enough evidence? Is this enough evidence to prove intent? Aggravated murder in the state of Utah is an intentional crime. The state is going to need to prove intent. And now that doesn't mean that they can't do that. You don't have to have direct evidence to prove that. You can have circumstantial evidence. And for those of you who don't know, most people have heard direct evidence versus circumstantial evidence. But that doesn't, just because you don't have direct evidence, like somebody saying that they saw the murder happen or a video of it happening, some sort of a recording, that's direct evidence. But if you don't have direct evidence, circumstantial evidence can be held just as strong. It's just as strong to support a murder conviction. There have been there's many, many, many convictions that happen based solely on circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
The other issue, though, is at this point, we don't know where Dylan is. We don't have a body. Assuming that that's what happened here, that a murder did take place here. We don't have a body. Now, again, that doesn't mean that there can't be a murder conviction. There are many, many, many murder convictions that happen without a body because circumstantial evidence is good evidence. They've got, I mean, you know, the feeling that a juror will have when they take a look at this evidence is this guy did it. I mean, that's the feeling that a human being has. And remember, the jurors are human beings, right? These are people that come to the table. They're supposed to remain impartial, and they're supposed to listen to all of the evidence and apply it according to the jury instructions given to them by the judge. But there's even if the state has some things that may be difficult for them in terms of intent, and there is no body here, those are some difficult hurdles for the state to overcome. But I don't think that is that necessarily means that they don't have a case. There's things that they're going to need to overcome, but this is a case that I also don't see the defendant taking the stand on, because right within the affidavit or the probable cause statement, they've got him making false statements. They have demonstrably false statements. These are clear and apparent statements that he's made that are false. So if this was a case that did go to trial, I highly doubt, I mean, I'd fall out of my chair if this defendant took the stand in his own defense, because, I mean, he'd just be ripped to pieces with, you know, having prior inconsistent statements during the investigation.
I got to ask you, this is going to throw us off a little bit, but I don't usually do this, but what was your thoughts on Murdaugh taking the stand and giving his own, you know, talking in his defense? I thought that was part of his undoing, but you don't see that often, as you said. You know, there's a trial going on that's noteworthy here in Long Island. Angela Polina, she stands accused of murdering little baby Thomas Valva in Suffolk County, and she's in court for day 3 on the stand in her own defense. And from what I understand today, the prosecutor got to cross her, and it was a grueling day for her. Most defense attorneys advise clients against that. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to make a statement against yourself in this country. You don't have to do that. And the second that you start to testify in your own defense, the prosecutor can now cross-examine you on a lot of different things, and a lot of times make things seem, and I'm not saying that, let me rephrase that. Sometimes during cross-examination, things come out that can be interpreted as conflicting, but are factually not. And this can be a little bit complicated, but I almost always advise people not to speak. You don't make any statements. Those statements will be used against you. And this is something also, I'm just going to take a moment to tell this to the audience. You have a right to remain silent. I can't tell you how many people, when they call me and they tell me, They've made statements to the police, and they didn't realize that it wasn't a big deal. They just didn't realize, and it's a shame. I try to take the time to explain to people, this is basic English. The right to remain silent, right? If you're born and raised in this country, that is basic English for you. You should be able to understand what that means.
Right.
And sometimes police are allowed to lie to you in order to, have you make a statement. And I say that with all due respect to the police, as Ron mentioned earlier. My father was in law enforcement, and he was a good guy.
Trickery is legal in a lot of in most parts of the United States, and it's a way that a lot of cases get broke. So without giving away trade secrets, I don't even like to get into these kind of conversations. But Sophia, you're so right. We looked at the Laundries, and they were never criminally charged, right? Roberta and Chris Laundrie, that's Brian Laundrie, who murdered Gabby Petito in the summer of 2021. They have not said a word until yesterday. Roberta made a statement in 2023, almost 2 years after her son killed himself and was, never charged with the murder of Gabby Petito, but they were under the advice of Stephen Bertolino, an attorney here in New York, a family attorney, and they never once said one thing. When the police came to their house in Northport, Florida, they handed their attorney's card to him and said, "We invoke our right to remain silent."
I always tell people, and please be careful with what you post on social media. Please be careful. I've seen so many situations where something so innocuous, something so innocent can be turned against you if you ever find yourself even in a civil, like a motor vehicle accident, and you're involved in a lawsuit and you're confronted with, your social media. You just be careful. That's my advice to everyone. Just please be careful. And if you're ever in doubt as to what you should do, you should just pick up the phone and call an attorney. Call several attorneys. Get a consult. Most attorneys will give you a free consultation, and it is so worth it to educate yourself on what you should and shouldn't do. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't cooperate when a police officer, I always tell people this, when a police officer pulls you over, you keep your hands at 10 and 2, and you do your yes sirs and your yes ma'ams, and you remain cooperative while you're, under their authority. And if you do think that a police officer has done something wrong, you handle that in court. That's what we have courts for.
You always can have your day in court, but you can't have your day in the street. I like to say that all the time.
Yeah, I love
days
that.
in the street, most of the times you come up a loser, and you wind up going to court, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But as Sophia is telling everybody here, it's great advice. You wait to have your day in court, and keep your mouth closed, because the more you say, the worse the situation can become. I want to just go to the chat, if you don't mind. We have close to 750 people watching us live. So a lot of people are saying girl power. It's the girls' day today. It's I believe International Businesswomen's, or I know I'm saying it wrong, but we're celebrating all of the working women out there. And you guys rock. So let's say hello to our new channel members: James ML, Jojo, Char is here, Dragon, Zombie, women, not girls. Listen, no matter what I say, there's always going to be a correction to it. Love you too, Dragon Zone. Black Rose 11, Lieutenant Pete Pranzo, Harlem Raiders. He's a retired NYPD lieutenant. A very, very famous chap, as we call him, in the NYPD. He was a boss, and he's got a book out. I have it on my shelf behind me over here. Harlem Raiders. He was in street crime, the infamous street crime unit. Your name and here, Gayla Dennison, your name and badge number. Then it's time for internal affairs. So everybody's getting into a whole bunch of different conversations. But listen, I want to celebrate each and every one of you in the chat. We appreciate it. And I promised you guys towards the end of this thing, we would do, 5 or 10 minutes of a Q&A. So if you have a question, put hashtag Sophia hashtag DutyRon, and put that hashtag in the chat and put your question as it pertains to James Brenner and the charges. We want to keep it on topic. James ML sends in a chat. What is okay? Member for 9 months. Thanks, DutyRon. I'm an OG here. Great panel. Yeah. No, I was just saying we gave out 10 free memberships, 30-day trial to some of the folks in the chat, and I just wanted to say hello to all the new members. I know that you're an OG, James. You are awesome, and I appreciate your support. Here's one of our good friends. She's an attorney over in the UK. Legal Minded Friends, Karen Cole. She is. Do they call them solicitors over there in the UK? I'm not sure. I'm going to get slayed for this one, but she's our UK defense attorney. So thank you, Karen, for being here, and thank you for everything that you do for Crime Time with DutyRon. I'm looking for some hashtags. I don't see anything. So here's one from Karen. Karen Solak is always asking questions. DutyRon, what if Brenner disposed of the body in another state? You know, that's a great question, because that's a possibility. There was so much time, and this is I'm going to put myself full screen for a minute, if you guys don't mind, because I want to just tell you this. This is something that Candace Cooley spoke very strongly about in the beginning when she was on with Ed and I. She said James Brenner had a felony warrant that was open the day her son went missing, and when the police converged onto the scene at Lucin, at the property in Lucin at the farm, her and her husband and Dylan's father, they were barking about that. Hey, why aren't you arresting James Brenner? He's got a warrant. And this is part of the problem that they had from the get-go. And, you know, this is a parent's worst nightmare. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, to have your son just vanish off the face of the earth. And now we know we're dealing with a murder case. This is a worst case scenario, but they had knowledge that there was a felony warrant for this guy, and they brought it to the police attention, and they did not do anything. They said, we'll get him another time. My head was ready to explode. Now, we know that there's always two sides to every story, and there's something in between, right? I don't know how that all transpired, but Sophia, it's just mind-boggling from the get-go with this case. All these struggles that this family had with communication with law enforcement. Yes, they were asking for a lot to be done, but they're talking about their son. I can't find fault in any parent for shouting from the rooftops, for using a bullhorn to scream, do something. My son is missing. Help me. And that's all they did. They just screamed. You know, just so much here. And I'm looking to the chat to see if there's any questions for you. So I thought that there would be a whole boatload of questions. So I went off on a little bit of a tear here, and I didn't see any questions for you, but I'm scrolling back right now as I'm blabbering.
Because I answered all of them already.
Here, let's unpack that. She's my good friend from friend of Crime Time with DutyRon. She says, hashtag DutyRon, would they offer him a plea deal for locating Dylan? Now, let me just say this, and I'm not being partial, but let's unpack that. Is got the question of the live stream, because you know, Sophia, we spoke about this before we went on air. I'm going to let you take that one, even though it's hashtag DutyRon.
Sure. They could. I mean, most of these cases end in a plea deal. And they could potentially say, you know, negotiate and say, tell us where the body is, and we'll offer you a plea deal. We will not file that notice of intent to, seek capital punishment here. We won't do that if you do this. You know, that's normal, but way of negotiating these things.
Time out, though. Wait a minute. Are you saying that they can offer a plea deal and take that death penalty off the table? Would he get less time for giving up Dylan's location of where his remains are, or is in a situation like that, when you're talking about a murdered 19-year-old, are they going to say you can get out in 15 years? I would hope not. 10 years? No.
They would have to, if they're going to offer less than what the statute allows, they would have to downgrade this charge. It would have to be downgraded to, like right now it's at aggravated murder. It may need to be downgraded to manslaughter. I don't know. I didn't look up what the penalty is for manslaughter in Utah, but
I think it's 20 years. I think it's 20.
20, but maybe it's 20 and doesn't require you to serve the full 20. Like there's a difference between having to serve the full amount of time, having to serve a certain percentage of that time before you're eligible for parole. But yeah, that's possible.
I would have a hard time swallowing that pill. Do you think that, and let's play devil's advocate here, Sophia, do you think that the prosecutor would go to Dylan's mom and dad and the family and say, hey, this is what we're thinking? Does that go on? Because I've had a former prosecutor on with me from the Queens County District Attorney's Office, and it's a big office, the district attorney, and they do communications with, the victims' families and so forth. But I'm just curious, would they have any input in that, or would they just do that without consulting with the family?
So it's not a science. There are victims' rights. Like I can tell you here in New Jersey, you have a right to be heard at sentencing. The prosecutors almost always consult with a victim in determining whether they're going to amend a charge down, or whether they may end up dismissing a charge. It depends on the case. And now this in this particular case, the prosecutor will probably take into very serious consideration what the family wants done here in terms of a plea deal. And if the victim's family is adamant about not wanting him to get a break in any way, the prosecutor is going to have to take that into consideration. But ultimately, it is the prosecutor's decision.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, thank you for answering that. I know from firsthand experience, my son was a victim of a crime and was assaulted. He was knocked out, was punched at a bar by one of the bouncers, and he had nothing to do with the problem that was going on. He was just collateral damage. So some big goon punched my son outside of a location in Queens. He fell to the ground unconscious, busted his lip open, concussion, and he was about 22, 23 years old. He was still in college, so he's 22. He's a college baseball player. And the district attorney communicated with me, and I know they were communicating with me heavily because they knew I worked in Queens. So I dealt with that office a lot. So I made it known that, I'm a retired detective. This is my son. I want the max on this guy. I want him to get the max. But they wound up pleading with him, and they did confront, they did consult with me. They did call me and say, hey, are you okay with this? We're going to get your son, I think it was like a 2 or 3 year order of protection, and then they'll re-up the order of protection if he still felt threatened. There was a lot of concessions and this guy, he still wound up doing 15 days in jail. But to me, it really left a bad taste in my mouth because I was so pissed that he was able to damage my son. He busted his lip, left him unconscious in the gutter. If my son would have fell and hit his head just the right way, he could have either been brain damaged or dead. Yeah. So I was really pissed about it. I used the F word. So, and I was saying, this is not cool. But my son just wanted to be done with the case, and he didn't want to have to keep going back into court. So I let him also make the decision. And I said to him, if you want to go full tilt with this, then we could say no to this and have them, have him take it to trial. But they gave him a plea deal. He got 15 days jail. And that was it. So in this situation with Dylan Rounds, I do believe that they will consult with Candace Cooley and Justin Rounds and the entire family, and they will, somebody in the chat said, I would want my son back, right? So I think that from what we heard Candace talk about, she wants to find her son. She wants to bring him home. She wants to give him a proper burial. She wants her son back home. And I think that she probably would agree to some type of plea deal if James Brenner brought them. And listen, I brought confidential informants into judges in the chambers and wrote up search warrants with these confidential informants. And the judge outright tells them pretty much, listen, if we go to this location and what you say is not there, the deal that I'm offering you is off the table. So it's almost like, in a case like this, they would go to Brenner and say, listen, don't give us a bullshit thing and don't send us on a wild goose chase. Either you tell us where he is or what you did with him and we go and recover his remains, then we'll, honor this plea deal. But they're not going to honor the plea deal if he sends them on a wild goose chase. So it's got to be good, solid information. And, that we might be looking at that, so. One of our brave members from the audience, Unpack That, has come up, and I'm going to add her into the stream. She always asks good questions, and then we'll conclude after this because we're over an hour already. Sophia's overtime rate is $1,250 an hour, and I don't think I can afford it. So let's get Kristen on. Hi, Kristen.
Hey, I can't afford her overtime rates either. So.
What are you?
I'm not charging you guys.
Well, I've got about 7 different questions that I have been hashtagged to you that I can kind of streamline for you. But first, Sophia, thank you. Happy International Women's Day, and for sitting there so put together, so poised, and to be able to present that information. You really are the epitome of that. So thank you very much.
Oh my goodness, that was very kind of you. Thank you. I don't know that I'm deserving of that, but thank you so much.
Most people can tell. You can tell a person, in those first few minutes, and you could definitely tell. But let's go into.
Uh-oh. Something happened. Technology failed her. She said, let's go into, and now she's gone.
Oh, hear me now?
Yes. Now I hear you.
Okay. Whoa, scared me. Okay. So one of the members asked for just a clarification, Sophia, in regards to, she thought it was mentioned that Brennan was the victim. Do you remember that statement, or can you find that? It's been several minutes back in chat, but I'm just wondering if you remember anything that was along those lines. I'm just trying to help that one out who asked it.
That you're saying that there was a statement made that Brenner was a victim?
Right. Well, for Emily, I don't think she'll mind. Hashtag.
Yeah, Brenner, Dylan Rounds is the victim here. James Brenner is, in on unrelated gun charges at this point, and now he has these new charges that are levied against him. He's not a victim. He is the defendant in this case.
I don't know if I had, perhaps I misspoke and
honestly, that's what I figured. Just easier for you to put it out there in the chat so you don't get questions later.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I apologize for that. No, Brenner is absolutely not a victim here.
Yeah, he's the defendant. And if she did say that, it's just, again, this is a live broadcast, and sometimes we say things that she's got a lot of papers in front of her, and this is something that we put onto her in her lap real quick. So
thank you for pointing it out, though. It's very important to make corrections. So thank you so much.
I feel so bad for saying it, but I'm like, just for clarification, let's get everybody out there that's not the case.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the
comments down below in the comment section about that. So I will just get a standard answer to that and copy and paste that to everybody that sends it in.
God. So another really great question was something I wondered too. So if there is a plea deal offered, okay, could the other charges, weapons, anything FBI, anything along those lines, could that equal, life in prison instead of, maybe they offer a deal, no DP or no death penalty, for the location of Dylan. Is there enough other charges that would guarantee that man would never get out of prison?
Sometimes the prosecutors make a global offer on, multiple cases happening, at the same time. And they'll say, okay, to just resolve all of these pending cases will make this global offer, and maybe that'll make charges go away in one case, or they're downgraded in one case, but then they remain in another case. And then all of the separate cases can end up being resolved. So that does happen. I'm not entirely sure what he's facing with regard to the firearms charges, but those are very serious charges with lots of jail time attached to it, no matter what kind of firearms charge that you have. And my understanding is that those are federal charges. So you can pretty much bet that there's going to be significant jail time attached to what he's currently facing. And also at the time of sentencing, even if the prosecutor strikes a deal with him and he takes it, the prosecutor can make a recommendation on sentencing, but it's up to the judge as to what he actually ends up getting with regard to sentence. And aggravating factors will be taken into consideration. The aggravating factors get taken into consideration during sentencing, as well as mitigating factors. But his history is bad, and that will very likely be a major aggravating factor against him.
Right. And those federal firearms charges, as you said, Sophia, if you get sentenced to 15 years in the Fed, you're going to do those 15 years. There's no real plea bargain. There's no early release or parole and so forth. They don't really go like that. So most of the criminals that I've come in contact with, they always try to avoid federal charges. They avoided that like the plague, because when you get sentenced to a 10-year bid, you do 10 years. So James Brenner is looking at not really getting out during his natural born life, even with some of these lower charges, if he was to be found guilty of some of the lower charges. But we're looking at the main thing here, and I'm hoping and praying that the prosecutor has good, strong evidence, and it sounds like they do. It sounds like there's probably a lot more that we won't hear about in these PCAs. The probable cause affidavits are really just what they need to levy these charges. All of the evidence that they've collected and have, it's all tucked away, and they're not going to release that, and like you said, until the trial commences and discovery phase starts in that trial. Yeah.
So I have two general questions that have been asked about 4 times for you, Sophia.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. If you knew that somebody was guilty, how do you defend them?
I get that question.
You knew it was coming, Ron. It was like 7 times in the chat.
I saw it. I saw it. I was going to answer it, but Joe Murray's been on with us, and I've had many other attorneys. I'll let her answer it, but I know it's kind of part of the attorney code. So go ahead.
Right.
Well, I can tell you, I obviously have been asked that question many times, and it's something that I used to think about, before I became an attorney, is like how, you see somebody like where there's like this overwhelming evidence, this person definitely did this crime. And then you see them go to the arraignment, and then they plead not guilty. And it's like, it's like laughable almost, because it's like, well, there's a video of you doing it. Like, why are you allowed to plead not guilty, during your arraignment? This is ridiculous. But there's a process here, and it's due process. And it's one of the most cherished rights that we have here. And it separates the United States from so many other countries, is that God forbid if you're charged with something and you didn't do it. Now, I realize your question is, if you know someone did it, how do you defend them? And I'll share something with you that my father had told me a while back. And he said, if you are able to successfully defend someone who absolutely committed a crime, then that's the fault of the system and the law. Now, I can tell you that with my cases, it's not as open and shut sometimes, like there's a burden of proof that needs to be had. And you are innocent until proven guilty. And that's the way it works. My client is innocent until that person is proven guilty. I hope that answers your question.
And the burden lies with the state to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden is on the prosecution, on the state. Listen, we're over an hour and 20 minutes here. I want to just say again quickly, thank you to Kristen for always calling in and asking the tough questions. That clip, just so you know, Sophia, it wasn't you that said it. It was some of the news broadcasters like Nate Eaton. They misspoke on it. So
okay, great.
Look at you. Sorry. It wasn't the ladies, Ron.
You're cleared of any. You're not guilty as charged. Let me highlight a couple of people.
Thank you for being my attorney.
Yeah, I'm here to defend you. I'm here to defend you on International Women's Day. D Banks, hello, and thank you for being a channel member and a real fine supporter of Crime Time with DutyRon. She's been in the chat this whole time, and a whole bunch of folks. Schmitty's here. James ML sending in super chats. Here's one coming in from the UK. James ML says, many thanks, DutyRon, Mods, and Sophia. We appreciate you, and we thank you for the support. Nurse Fifi is in the building. Don, a new channel member. Eileen says, please come back, Sophia. And that's my next question. I'm going to ask you, would you mind, can I put you in my Rolodex for criminal defense attorneys and so forth to come back?
Say yes.
Please do. This was such a pleasure and it was an honor. Again, so a very sad case to be discussing, but I'm really thankful to you and to your channel and to the people watching who are interested in seeking justice.
Yeah. Well, listen, there's so many thanks for you coming in. I've been highlighting them. Sweet One says, thank you. Great show. Teresa says, thank you, Sophia. I think that you were a huge hit tonight with the audience here. And I have to let you in on a little secret. We'll get a couple of chuckles and laughs out of this one. My analytics show that 90% of my audience is women. I know they're not tuning in to see my good looks card, but the women love true.
Of course they are.
They love true crime, ladies. And so I have to say 90-10. So it's 90% women, 10% men. Joey Brooklyn is one of the 10% men, and he's all man. Joey Brooklyn is a great friend of mine, and he's the reason why I'm on YouTube. This guy right here that I highlighted, he is my brother from another mother, and he is a great guy. I've had many dinners out with him and his wife, Kathy. Thank you, Joey Brooklyn, for pushing me to come onto YouTube some 3 or so years ago. And we're at 160,000 subscribers. We started with 0, and we built this great community here of active, engaging people. Aussie J from Australia checking in, Natasha Richardson, and all of these great folks that are in on the chat. Angela is here. She does a lot of my short videos for me. You help me out a lot, Kristen, and I thank you for that. And Karen over in the UK makes my little short videos as well for Instagram. So I have attorneys working for me internationally. So thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. All right, Kristen, I'm going to let you go. And then
I was going to say, I've just been hanging out, but thank you, both of you. End your show, and I will see you in the chat soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so there goes Kristen. So yeah, I to wrap this thing up, we wanted to give you guys an overview of James Brenner's charges and what is, what's the next steps for this. And I think we did a pretty good job, although we were kind of, in different corners and going around into some different areas. But I think overall in this hour and 25 minutes, we covered these charges and what could possibly be happening in this case. And we'll follow it closely. I know I will. I'll update you, Sophia, as things develop. And maybe we'll circle back in the near future, and we'll have another discussion on this. I want to say thank you so much on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and the entire community here. We so appreciate you. And there's so many cases that we could call you back in on, that I've been working on, and I hope that we could do that going forward, because a lot of trials are going to be commencing in the future, and we'd like to get maybe your take on the trials as they move forward. So I appreciate it. And you have any final words or parting words for the audience in regards to this?
I hope that people continue to look at this case and ask questions, and educate themselves on things that are happening, because I mean, educating yourself is powerful, and there's things to be learned from these types of cases that I mean, hopefully you never have to experience what Dylan's family's experiencing right now, but maybe somebody else that experiences something like this, and maybe you can learn something that can be helpful. You never know what life brings,
Yeah.
But wishing everybody well, and it was a great pleasure and honor to be here.
And again, I so appreciate your expertise and your time. I mean, I asked you if you had 40 minutes, and you were like, yeah. Now here we are, an hour and 26 minutes. So that just
this
goes
was so fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it really what makes it special is that we have an engaging audience, and we have folks who will continue to ask the questions. So I'm encouraging people to leave us comments down below. Leave it for me and leave it for Sophia as well. Just in the comment section, put in the comment who your question is, who it's pertaining to, and we'll get to them. We'll answer them. I know I will. I'll either get with her and ask her the tough questions and then answer for her. So again, I want to say thank you to you, and for all of the folks who watch this, the live chatters and the moderators. You guys are great. So on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Sophia, we are going to wish you guys a good Wednesday evening. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next live stream. As I like to end all of these, God bless the world. God bless the United States of America. God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all victims of crime and their families. We send them strength, prayers, and positive vibes. We'll see you on the next one. And until then, stay safe. Peace, guys.